Hi, today I'm going to be doing two videos. One will be about how to make banku, and then the other will be about how to make the okra stew to go with it. I'll first of all start off with the okra stew, and then the ingredients that you need for the okra stew are some pieces of stewing beef. You can use goat meat, chicken that you like. Mostly stewing hen is much more preferable, but if you don't have stewing hen, any other chicken meat is okay. And you need some tomatoes, habanero, pepper, fresh one. Of course, I'm not going to use this. That will be too hot to eat. I'm going to use about half of it. You need about 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste, a can of tomato sauce, some fresh tomatoes, onion. All these can be varied. You don't have to put as much as a cup. Should be okay. Less than a cup should be equally fine. You need some fresh tilapias, some okra. I'm not using fresh okra. I'm using the frozen okra, and then this is the variety I'm using. But any other variety is fine. If you have fresh okra in your area, that should equally be fine. I'll need some seasoning salt, but mostly in Ghanaian cooking they use Maggi, but this is Maggi powder. I'm not going to use this. If you are comfortable using it, you can go ahead and then do it. So first of all, I'm starting off with 4 cups of water here. So I'm going to put this meat on the fire here to parboil. I'll put it on high. And into this, I'm going to add about half cup of water. I didn't cut up the onion, but I'll just cut it in here. I'm going to parboil this and let the seasoning get into the meat very well. I'm going to add all the tomatoes here, and I'll cover and bring this to a boil. So whilst that is boiling, I will come over here and season my tilapia. These are very big tilapia, so I'll try to cut them into 3 pieces. You can cut them into 2 if you want big pieces of the tilapia. But since I'll be putting them back in the stew when it's done, I'll put 1 whole piece of tilapia in it. So each piece I cut into 3. If you have smaller tilapias, you don't have to cut them into 3 pieces. And then I'll put some place here. This tilapia can be used in 2 different ways. You can either season and fry it before you put into the stew, or you can just season and put it into the okra stew when it's almost done, and that should be fine. But the route I'm going to take today, I'm going to be seasoning it, frying it slightly before putting it in the soup or stew. When cooking fish, it's a great idea to season it very well, or else it doesn't taste too good. I'll set this aside to season. I'm going to be cutting this into half and adding the half into the boiled meat here, which I'll be blending when it's done. Then I would come and take care of my dried fish. This is strictly optional. You do not have to use the smoked fish, because I know certain areas it's very hard to get a smoked fish. If you have it, it's a plus, but if not, eliminating this is not going to change the taste of the stew very much. But we just like the taste of the smoked fish in most of our cuisines. So I'm just going to use a little bit. So since this is smoked, you can just even eat it this way. It's very good. So I'm going to soak this into water so that when I make the stew, I'll put it in at that time. Okay, I'm going to be cutting the okra into smaller pieces. So for half of this okra, I'm going to cut into smaller pieces, and the other half, I'm just going to cut them into halves that'll be put into the stew. You have many ways of doing this. You can pound your okra, you can chop it up. Some cut off these heads before they use, which is equally fine, but this is very young okra, or okro as is popularly known in Ghana. So I'm cutting this into halves. And some other ways of making the okra stew is to boil it for a while and take off the sliminess of it and put into the stew. So in that case, it's very slimy right now. You divide them into sizable pieces like this. It's actually very slimy because it's frozen, so it's much harder to deal with. But if you use the fresh okra, you wouldn't have this problem. So I'll continue cutting till I'm done, then set aside and begin frying the fish, at which point my fish should be well seasoned. One other ingredient that I forgot to mention was the oil. So I'm using extra virgin oil here. You can use any other oil. I'm not going to do a deep fryer. I just want the sides of the fish to be crunchy before I put it into the stew. So I'll put this here for it to heat up. And whilst that is heating up, I think my tomato is ready to take out of the... This has been boiling for a while now. So the meat is looking very good. If you are using stewing hen, you would have to cook the meat for a much longer time. Goat meat is easy to cook as well over here. So I'm going to take out this tomato and blend it. So I have the blender ready here. I'm going to be using this water as part of the cuisine, so it's okay to dip my hands in. It's kind of hot, so when you're doing this, if you're not comfortable taking it off very hot, you have to wait some minutes for it to cool. I'm gonna put it in here. Could you have blended the tomatoes with the skins on? Yes, you could have. But sometimes I prefer just to have the skins off. Then I blend this till I get a smooth texture. Okay. In frying tilapia or any fish, you can decide to coat it with some bread flour or all-purpose flour, but I don't want to do that today. So I'm just going to put them down here. This has been sitting there for about 5 to 7 minutes. Hopefully this can all get into the pan. There you go. Alright. And this left over, I don't like to wait while cooking. I'll pour it in here. I'm going to begin to make the tomato stew. It's kind of hot right now. So I'll pour this over here, set it aside, add some oil. This is kind of like this is like a marinara sauce, which is tomato stews that are popular in Ghanaian cuisines. I had to add some extra onion, as I like to cook with a lot of onion and garlic. So I'll put part of this in and put this in when it's almost done. I'll stir this around. So there's a lot of multitasking involved in making this dish. I just want to start with only the stew. When the stew is done, then I show you how to make the banku. I'll add a little bit of salt to the onion. You don't have to do that, but this way the onions season well. So that when you get a piece of the onion after cooking, it's really good as well. If you want to use, I'm trying to cut down on fats and salts, so that's why I don't have too much fat in here. But you can add 2 more tablespoons of the oil if you want. So I'll pour in all the blended tomato. If you don't want to use the blended tomato and use only the tomato sauce and tomato paste, that should be fine. Added a little bit of the water that I have. Now I could have added the broth. Then I add the tomato paste just to give it a red color and thickness. And I add the whole kind of the tomato sauce. So if you prefer not to use the tomato sauce and want to use a lot of the fresh tomato, that means you have to increase the quantity of tomato you are using. Added a bit of the broth into the can, take all the tomato out. Then I'll stir this, lower the heat, let it simmer for a while. I'm going to add the meat all at once now. So I'll cover and let it continue to boil. And whilst that is cooking, then I'll check on the fish to see how it's doing. When the side is brown, dark golden brown, I'll turn them over. I've already flipped over some of the fish here. It's kind of golden brown here. Then I'll go ahead and flip the rest. When this is done, I'm going to use about 3 pieces of the fish, which is equivalent to 1 whole fish. The head, the mid section, and the tail into the stew. And then the other 3 pieces, I'll just leave out of the stew. So at this stage, I'm going to be adding the dried smoked fish. If you do not have this, as I initially said, you don't have to be worried. Your stew will still come out good. And I'll stir this. And I'll add the okra. And pour in all the broth here. And I'll cover this. If you want to add some kanwa, you can go ahead and add the kanwa. But in the absence of the kanwa, you can add baking soda. I'm just going to add a little baking soda. which is same as the can one we use. It will foam up a little bit. It's a whole okra that wasn't cut, but that should be fine. And I'll reduce the heat to medium high and then cover. With the okra stew, it will depend on how much okra you want in it. We don't want it too much okra in the stew. If you want a lot of okra, you can add 2 cups of okra, cut up okra to this, and you should be fine. So I'm going to season this. It's not well seasoned. At this stage, if you don't want to use my seasoning salt and prefer to spice it up more with the Maggi powder, that should be equally fine. But I'm cutting down on all that, so I'll season this way. Make sure I stir and taste. So, and the fish is almost ready here. Okay, this is good. Just gonna put this in the stew here. If you prefer not to have the fish in the stew, that should be fine, because when you put the fish in the stew, you have to be very careful as to how you stir it. And if you are not comfortable using fish with bone in, you can use fish fillets, tilapia fillets. Okay, this is ready to go. We like to chow down on the head of the tilapia and then the middle portion of this. And for the remainder, I'm going to fry it till they are very crunchy. So now that the fish is in here, I have to be very careful about the way I stir. I'm going to create some room for this fish to submerge. So you end up with a big pot of okra stew here. Okay. At this stage, I'm going to lower the heat to low and actually transfer this to the back burner, as I'll be preparing the banku very soon. My soup is almost, or stew is almost done. I like to do this a lot. The remaining onion I put in. If you have garlic, nutmeg, ginger, you can put at this stage, but I'm not using all that today. Okay, I'm going to be using this to stir, since I do not want to let my fish disintegrate. And it's actually done now. I'll just lower the heat and let it continue to cook. And this fish is also done. And then I can begin the banku process. There you have the finished product banku with okra stew. I have one little bowl here that I'll take and add some fish and okra, like the tail and the head as well, but I'll take only the tail for now. But this is not as spicy as I want it, so I'm going to add some habanero, ground habanero pepper before I eat. So this is the finished product, banku with okra stew. Banku with okra stew.